The unexpected invitation. The message arrived on a Tuesday. Not through conventional channels, not through any government satellite or military frequency. It simply appeared simultaneously on every major screen across Earth. Televisions, smartphones, billboards, even the ancient CRT monitors in forgotten basement offices all displayed the same shimmering golden script. Humanity is invited to join the Galactic Assembly. Send your representative to coordinates 447.889.12. You have 30 solar rotations to comply. Commander Iris Valdrin stood in the Emergency Council chamber beneath Geneva, watching world leaders argue in 17 languages. She'd been pulled from a routine patrol of the lunar mining colonies for this mess, her 15 years of xenobiology training suddenly making her the most valuable person in the room. It's obviously a hoax, the Chinese ambassador insisted, slamming his fist on the table. A hoax that appeared on military-grade encrypted systems? Iris cut in, her voice steady. Including the ones aboard our Mars settlements? The room fell silent. Iris pulled up a holographic display, her fingers dancing through data streams. I've analyzed the transmission signature. Whatever sent this operates on principles we don't have names for yet. The energy signature alone would require harnessing a small star. President Helena Okoye of the African Union leaned forward. Commander Valdrin, are you suggesting we actually respond? I'm suggesting we don't have a choice, Madam President. Iris zoomed in on astronomical data. These coordinates lead to a point beyond our explored space. If they can reach us this easily, they can probably do a lot worse than send messages. The Brazilian representative, Carlos Montenegro, cleared his throat. And if we send someone and they don't come back? Iris met his eyes. Then at least we'll know we tried diplomacy before they decided for us. 48 hours later, Iris found herself strapped into the experimental ship Horizon's Reach, humanity's fastest vessel, which could bend space in ways that made Einstein's ghost weep. Her small crew consisted of Dr. Yuki Tanaka, a linguist who could speak 23 languages and decode 30 more. Marcus Webb, a former Marine-turned-pilot who'd flown missions through asteroid fields blindfolded, and Zara al-Rashid, an engineer who'd built half the ship's systems herself. Running final diagnostics, Zara announced, her fingers flying across touchscreens. All systems nominal. I still can't believe they're sending our prototype. They're sending our only option, Marcus corrected, his hands steady on the controls. Nothing else we have can reach those coordinates in 30 days. Yuki looked up from her tablet, her face pale. I've been studying the message structure. The linguistic patterns suggest a civilization that values precision and hierarchy. We need to be careful with every word. Iris nodded. Then we'll be careful. But we'll also be honest. If there's one thing humans are good at, it's surprising people with what we're actually like. The countdown began. 10 seconds. Launch authorization confirmed. The Horizon's Reach tore away from Earth's orbit, space folding around it like origami in reverse. Stars streaked past in impossible colors. Iris watched her home planet shrink to a blue marble, then a pinprick, then nothing. They were committed now. 27 days into the journey, the ship's sensors screamed. A structure materialized ahead of them, so vast it made Earth's moon look like a grain of sand. The Galactic Assembly Station hung in space like a jeweled crown hundreds of miles across, with architecture that seemed to shift between geometric impossibilities. Mother of God, Marcus whispered. Thousands of ships surrounded the station, each one unique. Some looked organic, grown rather than built. Others were pure crystalline structures that defied physics. A vessel that appeared to be made of living flame drifted past their view screen. Receiving docking instructions, Yuki announced. Translated into 73 languages simultaneously, including 3 we've never encountered. They followed the guidance toward a docking bay that adjusted its size to accommodate their ship. The moment they landed, gravity shifted to Earth normal, and the airlock chimed with an invitation. Iris stood, straightening her uniform. The deep blue fabric bore Earth's flag on one shoulder and the new symbol they designed for humanity on the other, an open hand beneath stars. Remember the protocol. We observe first, we listen carefully, and we speak only truth. The airlock opened. Beyond it stood a figure that made Iris's breath catch. 7 feet tall, covered in scales that shimmered like oil on water, with 4 arms and eyes that seemed to contain entire galaxies. But what struck her most was its posture, welcoming and somehow tired. I am Convener Thelezen, the being said, its voice resonating directly in their minds. Welcome to the assembly, humans. You are later than most species to receive this invitation. We came as fast as we could, Iris replied, keeping her voice level. Thalazen's head tilted in what might have been curiosity. Indeed. Most species discover faster-than-light travel within centuries of achieving nuclear fission. You took considerably longer, yet arrived in a ship that bends space in ways we have not seen. Curious. They walked through corridors where the walls seemed alive with light. Other beings passed by, some acknowledging them with nods or gestures, others ignoring them entirely. Iris catalogued each species automatically. One that looked like walking crystals, another that seemed to exist partially out of phase with reality, a third that was essentially a cloud of luminescent gas contained in a transparent suit. There are 3,417 species in the assembly, Thalazen explained. You would be 3,418. If you qualify. Qualify? Marcus asked before Iris could stop him. There are requirements. Thalazen led them into a vast amphitheater where thousands of beings sat in tiered seating that defied Euclidean geometry. You must prove sentience, which you clearly possess. You must demonstrate technological capability, which your arrival confirms. And you must pass the trials of understanding. Iris felt her stomach drop. No one mentioned trials. They are tradition. Thalazen gestured to the assembled crowd. 3 challenges. 3 chances to prove your species deserves a voice among the stars. A massive holographic display materialized above the center of the amphitheater. On it, text scrolled in what Iris assumed was the assembly's common language, though her translator patch rendered it in English. Your first trial begins tomorrow, Thalazen announced. You will face the maze of memory. Many species fail. Some do not return. The alien's galaxy eyes fixed on Iris. I suggest you rest well, Commander Valdrin. Tomorrow you will need to remember what it means to be human. The maze of memory. Iris didn't sleep. How could she? The weight of representing an entire species pressed down on her chest like a physical force. Through the transparent walls of their assigned quarters, she watched alien ships drift past the station, each one a reminder that humanity was the newcomer here, the unknown variable in an equation that had been balanced for millennia. You're catastrophizing again, Yuki said softly from her bunk. The linguist hadn't been sleeping either. I can hear your breathing pattern change when you spiral. Iris turned from the window. What if we're not ready for this? What if Earth sent us out here just to fail in front of 3,000 civilizations? Then we fail spectacularly and at least give them something to talk about. Yuki sat up, her dark hair falling loose around her shoulders. I've been monitoring the station's public broadcasts. You want to know what I've learned? Tell me. Most species here are afraid of us. Iris blinked. Afraid? Of us? Have you seen some of these beings? There's one that's literally made of sentient plasma. Exactly. Yuki pulled up a holographic display between them, showing translated excerpts from alien message boards and news feeds. We appeared out of nowhere on their sensors. We shouldn't have this kind of technology yet. We're biological, carbon-based, and fragile, but we crossed distances that should have taken us centuries in less than a month. They don't know what to make of that. Marcus's voice drifted from the common area. They should be afraid. Humans are crazy. He appeared in the doorway holding 3 cups of something that smelled like burned coffee but probably wasn't. We looked at the laws of physics and said, nah, we'll find a workaround. We're the species that split atoms just to see what would happen. That's not exactly reassuring, Iris muttered, accepting the cup anyway. It should be. Marcus sat on the floor, his back against the wall. You know what I learned flying combat missions? The person who's most unpredictable isn't the one with the biggest gun. It's the one who does things nobody expects. We're that person now on a galactic scale. Zara emerged from the workshop area, grease smudged across her cheek. Speaking of unexpected, I've been analyzing the station's power systems. This place runs on principles that make our physics textbooks look like cave paintings. But you know what? I think I'm starting to understand it. Give me a few years and I could probably build something similar. That's my point, Marcus said. We're adapters. We're survivors. Whatever this maze throws at us tomorrow, we'll figure it out. Morning arrived by the station's arbitrary schedule, signaled by a chime that resonated in their bones. Thalazen appeared at their door, somehow looking more tired than the night before. Commander Valdrin, it is time. Your team may observe from the gallery, but you must face the maze alone. This is the ancient law. The amphitheater had transformed overnight. Where open space had existed, a massive structure now stood, its walls seeming to shift between solid matter and probability clouds. Other beings filled the tiered seating, thousands of eyes and sensors focused on the entrance where Iris stood. The maze of memory tests more than recall, Thalazin explained, his mental voice pitched for her alone. It tests whether you understand what you remember, whether you can see truth through the lens of experience. Many species enter confident and emerge broken, for they cannot accept what they find within. Iris rolled her shoulders, loosening tension. What exactly will I find? Yourself. Your species. Your history. Thalazin's scales rippled with something that might have been concern. The maze draws upon the collective unconscious of your people. It will show you moments that defined humanity. You must navigate them, understand them, and emerge with your convictions intact. And if I don't? Then the maze keeps you and humanity's petition is denied. We have not lost a candidate in 400 cycles, but the possibility remains. Great. No pressure. The entrance yawned before her like a mouth. Iris took one last look at her team in the gallery. Marcus gave her a thumbs up. Yuki touched 2 fingers to her forehead in a gesture of respect. Zara just nodded, confident and steady. Iris stepped into the maze. Reality twisted. The walls vanished, replaced by a scene she recognized from history books and memorial museums. She stood in Hiroshima, August 1945, seconds before the bomb fell. She could feel the heat building in the air, could see the people going about their mourning, unaware of what was coming. She wanted to scream a warning, but her voice wouldn't work. The flash came. The world turned white, then red, then black. When her vision cleared, she stood in a different time. The Cuban Missile Crisis. She was somehow in the room where President Kennedy and his advisors debated launching nuclear strikes. The tension was so thick she could taste it, fear and aggression and the terrible weight of holding apocalypse in your hands. The scene shifted again. And again. The maze showed her humanity's darkest moments. The Holocaust, the Rwandan genocide, the climate wars of the 2040s. It showed her violence and hatred and the awful things humans did to each other when fear took the wheel. Iris wanted to turn away, to deny it, to say this wasn't who they were. But the maze wouldn't let her. It forced her to watch, to remember, to acknowledge the blood in humanity's ledger. But then something changed. The scene shifted to a field hospital in war-torn Syria, 2016. She watched doctors work 30-hour shifts to save anyone who came through their doors, regardless of which side they fought for. The maze showed her the White Rose resistance in Nazi Germany, young people who chose death over compliance with evil. It showed her the civil rights marchers facing down fire hoses with courage that defied comprehension. It showed her the climate coalition, 50 nations setting aside centuries of grievances to save a planet that was burning. It showed her the Mars colony disaster of 2061, when a solar storm knocked out life support, and how crews from 3 different ships, including 2 from nations that were officially at war, rushed to save 800 colonists they'd never met. The maze showed her the first time humans gave away technology to help another species, sharing medical advances with the struggling Andorian colonies not for profit or influence, but because it was the right thing to do. Iris understood now. The maze wasn't showing her humanity's goodness or its evil. It was showing her the choice. Every moment, every decision point where humans chose either fear or hope, violence or mercy, selfishness or sacrifice. The walls reformed around her and she stood in a final chamber. A mirror materialized before her, but it didn't show her reflection. It showed humanity itself, a writhing mass of contradiction. Brilliant and stupid, kind and cruel, capable of both atrocity and transcendence. A voice echoed in the chamber, ancient and patient. What is your species, Iris Valdrin? What truth defines humanity? She took a breath. We are contradiction. We are the species that wages war and writes poetry about peace. We create weapons that can destroy planets and then we choose not to use them. We are selfish and self-sacrificing, often in the same moment. We are capable of terrible evil, which means we are capable of choosing not to commit it. The mirror shimmered. We remember our atrocities because we refuse to forget them. We teach our children about our failures because we want them to do better. We are the species that looks at the stars and says, yes, we'll go there, even though we know we might not come back. We are hope wrapped in mortality, and we will not stop reaching for something better than what we are. The chamber exploded with light. When Iris opened her eyes, she stood at the maze's exit. The amphitheater erupted in sounds she couldn't interpret. Some species were making noises of approval, others seemed shocked, and a few appeared angry. Thalazin approached, his scales shimmering with an emotion Iris was starting to read as surprise. In 10,000 cycles, no one has answered quite like that. Most species either deny their darkness or are consumed by it. You embraced both and claimed neither defined you. Because they don't, Iris said, her legs shaky but her voice firm. We're more than our worst moments and our best ones. We're what we choose to become. Thalazzin's galaxy eyes seemed to brighten. Indeed. You have passed the first trial. But know this, Commander, you have also made enemies today. There are factions within the Assembly who do not wish humanity to join. Your honest self-assessment has complicated their arguments. In the gallery her team was celebrating, but Iris noticed something else. Several groups of aliens were leaving the amphitheater, their body language radiating hostility. One, a towering being covered in chitinous armor, turned to look directly at her before departing. The hatred in that gaze was unmistakable. What are the next 2 trials? Iris asked. Rest first, Thalazzin advised. You will need your strength. Tomorrow brings the test of strength and it is not what you think. As Iris rejoined her team, Yuki whispered urgently, I've been monitoring diplomatic channels. Several powerful species are lobbying to reject humanity immediately. They're calling us chaos factors and destabilizers. That speech you gave? It scared them. Good, Marcus muttered. If we're making the established powers nervous, we're doing something right. But Iris felt a chill run down her spine. They'd passed one trial and somehow made things worse. She looked out at the vast assembly of alien species, trying to calculate how many saw humanity as a threat versus an opportunity. The math didn't look good. The test of strength. The challenge arena materialized overnight in the station's central hub, a space large enough to hold Earth's largest stadium 3 times over. Iris stood at its edge, staring at the obstacle course that defied every law of physics she'd ever learned. Sections existed in different gravity wells, areas phased between dimensions, and one portion that seemed to exist in 5 different time streams simultaneously. You're kidding, Zara muttered, her engineering mind already trying to calculate solutions. That's not a test, that's a death trap. Thalazzin approached their observation platform, his 4 arms folded in what Iris had learned was a gesture of formal greeting. The test of strength is ancient tradition. Each species faces challenges calibrated to their physical capabilities. You will not be asked to do the impossible. Just the incredibly, ridiculously difficult? Marcus asked. Precisely. But Iris noticed something. Other aliens were gathered around their own challenge courses, each one uniquely designed. A crystalline species faced what looked like a maze of harmonic frequencies. The cloud beings navigated through pressure chambers. The chitinous warrior race she'd seen leaving yesterday was smashing through literal walls of metal. Wait, Iris said slowly. This isn't about raw strength at all, is it? Thalazzin's scales rippled, what she now recognized as approval. You see clearly, Commander. Strength takes many forms. Physical power, yes, but also resilience, adaptability, and the wisdom to know when strength means endurance rather than force. Iris studied her course again with new eyes. The challenges weren't designed to test maximum power output. They tested problem-solving under pressure, the ability to adapt when physics itself became unreliable, and the endurance to keep going when every muscle screamed to stop. There's something else, Yuki said quietly. She'd been watching the crowd. See those groups of aliens clustered together? They're making bets. This isn't just about qualification anymore. This is entertainment. And politics. She was right. Iris spotted delegates from various species engaged in animated discussions, gesture languages flowing between incompatible biologies. Several were pointing at her course, their body language suggesting debate or disagreement. The Xerix Dominion is offering 10-to-1 odds against you, Zara reported, scanning translated betting markets on her tablet. They're one of the oldest civilizations here and they've never liked newcomer species. They want you to fail. Then let's disappoint them, Iris said, rolling her shoulders. The signal chimed. Her trial began. Iris sprinted toward the first obstacle, a wall of energy that rippled with lethal voltage. Direct contact would kill her instantly, but there were handholds spaced at intervals that seemed random until she realized they followed a pattern. Musical notes. A frequency relationship. She hummed to herself, timing her jumps to match the harmonic sequence. The wall recognized the pattern and sections dimmed long enough for her to pass through. The next challenge dropped her into a gravity well that cycled between crushing weight and near zero G every 3 seconds. Most species, Thalazzin had explained, would use their natural strength to power through or their ability to manipulate gravity. Humans had neither. But humans had stubbornness. Iris timed her movements to the cycle, using high gravity to build momentum and low gravity to execute what would be impossible jumps. It was like dancing with physics as a hostile partner, but she trained in variable gravity on the moon basis. Her body knew how to adapt. Sweat poured down her face as she reached the third section, a corridor that existed in multiple time streams. She could see 5 versions of herself moving at different speeds through the same space. Enter wrong and she'd collide with her own timeline, creating a paradox that would eliminate her. Iris closed her eyes. Logic wouldn't work here. Instead, she reached for intuition, that peculiarly human ability to make split-second decisions based on insufficient data and call it instinct. She stepped forward, trusting her gut. The timelines aligned. She passed through. But the fourth challenge made her pause. A chasm stretched before her, too wide to jump, too deep to see the bottom. No bridge, no obvious path. Just empty space and the certainty of death if she fell. In the observation gallery, Marcus swore. There's nothing there. How is she supposed to cross nothing? Wait, Yuki breathed. Look at her body language. Iris stood perfectly still at the chasm's edge. She'd seen this before in the maze of memory. The Climate Coalition negotiators facing an impossible situation. No visible solution, certain failure looming. What had they done? They'd asked for help. Iris turned to the crowd. Thousands of aliens watched her, some hoping she'd succeed, others betting on her failure. She spread her hands in a universal gesture of openness. I can't cross this alone, she said, her voice amplified by the arena systems. I'm asking for help. Is there anyone here who'll teach me how to solve this? Silence crashed through the amphitheater. Several species recoiled as if she'd committed blasphemy. The Xerix delegate stood abruptly, chitinous armor clicking with outrage. But then, from a section she hadn't noticed before, a small being floated forward. It looked like a jellyfish made of starlight, barely 3 feet across, from a species called the Lumini. Its telepathic voice was gentle in her mind. The bridge is faith, young human. You must trust that the path exists even though you cannot see it. Step forward. Iris looked back at the chasm. This went against every survival instinct, every rational thought. But she'd asked for help and help had answered. She thought about all the times humanity had taken leaps of faith. The first ocean voyage beyond sight of land, the first step onto the moon, the first colony ship to Mars when the technology was barely proven. She stepped into empty air. Her foot found solid ground. The bridge revealed itself as she walked, invisible until her weight confirmed its existence. Each step was an act of trust, of faith in both the technology and the being who'd guided her. When she reached the other side, the Lumini pulsed with soft light. Well done, child of Earth. Your species will go far. The final challenge was simpler but perhaps hardest of all. A long corridor with no obstacles, no tricks, just distance. The catch was the atmosphere. It cycled through environments hostile to human life every 30 seconds. Toxic gas, vacuum, crushing pressure, extreme heat. She had a survival suit in a locker at the corridor's start, top-of-the-line Earth technology. But there was no way it would last the entire length. The suit's battery would die halfway through, and she'd have 3 more environmental changes to survive. Unless she did something crazy. Iris put on the suit but didn't activate it. Instead she ran. Full sprint, ignoring the burn in her legs, the screaming of her lungs. She covered as much distance as possible before the first hostile environment hit. Toxic gas flooded the corridor. She activated the suit, the filters roaring to life. The protection held. She kept running. 30 seconds. Vacuum. The suit sealed perfectly. She pushed harder. The suit's cooling systems engaged. Still running. Pressure. The suit's structural support stiffened. Her legs felt like they were moving through concrete, but she didn't stop. Then, as predicted, the battery warning flashed. 10%. 5%. Dead. Toxic gas again, and she had no protection. Iris did something that made every alien in the audience surge forward in shock. She stripped off the useless suit and kept running. Her lungs burned immediately, eyes watering from the chemical assault. She covered her mouth with her uniform sleeve, not because it would help much, but because doing something felt better than doing nothing. She could see the finish line. 30 feet. 20. 10. Her vision tunneled. Her body was shutting down. But she'd come too far to quit now. Humans didn't quit. She crossed the line and collapsed. Medical teams swarmed her immediately, alien technology flooding her system with healing nanites and oxygen-rich fluids. She coughed violently, her throat raw, but she was alive. And she'd finished. The amphitheater erupted. Not just in celebration but in argument. The Xerix delegate was screaming in their clicking language, gesturing wildly. Other species were counter-arguing, the universal translator struggling to keep up with 17 simultaneous debates. Thelazan appeared beside her recovery pod. You have caused quite a controversy, Commander. Some say you cheated by asking for help. Others say you cheated by discarding your equipment. The Xerics claim you broke the spirit of the test by choosing to suffer damage rather than overcome the challenge properly. Iris managed a weak laugh. And what do you say? Thalazzin's galaxy eyes swirled with something that might have been amusement. I say you demonstrated every form of strength we value: physical endurance, mental adaptability, the wisdom to seek help when needed, and the courage to sacrifice yourself for success. You passed, Commander. Spectacularly. But the convener's expression grew serious. However, you have made a powerful enemy. The Xerix Dominion has filed a formal protest. They are calling for your immediate disqualification and humanity's permanent exclusion from the Assembly. On what grounds? They claim humans are cheaters who cannot follow rules. That you will destabilize the Assembly's ancient traditions with your creativity. Thalazzin's scales rippled. Between us, Commander, I believe that is exactly what they fear. The Assembly has been static for millennia. You represent change. In the gallery, Yuki was frantically translating diplomatic channels. Iris, this is bad. The Xerics have called a full Assembly vote. They're pushing to disqualify us before the third trial. Marcus's face was grim. They're scared we'll pass. So they're changing the rules to make sure we can't. Zara pulled up political maps showing alliance structures. The Xerics control a voting block of 347 species. If they vote as a unit and convince just 200 more species to join them, we're done. No third trial, no membership, just a long trip home. Iris pulled herself up, her body still aching. Then we need to convince them not to vote against us. How long until the vote? 8 hours, Thalazzin said. By Assembly law, formal protests must be resolved within one station cycle. You should rest, Commander. Your body needs time too. 8 hours to save humanity's chance at the stars? Iris swung her legs off the medical pod. I'll rest when I'm dead. Right now, I need to do something humans are surprisingly good at. What's that? Marcus asked. Iris smiled, though it hurt. Politics. If they want to play games with rules and votes, let's show them we can do that too. Yuki, I need a list of every undecided species. Zara, find me the Assembly's complete charter and bylaws. Marcus, you're with me. We're going to make some friends. You should know, Thalazzin warned, the Xerics have been building alliances for centuries. They have connections, leverage, and favors owed that span generations. What makes you think you can counter that in 8 hours? Iris met his galaxy eyes steadily. Because we're the species that once passed the climate accord when we only had 12 hours left before ecological collapse. We're really good at last-minute saves. It's kind of our thing. As she limped out of the medical bay, supported by Marcus, she heard Thalazzin murmur to himself, perhaps that is why we invited them. The clock was ticking. 8 hours to save humanity's future among the stars. No pressure. The diplomatic gambit. The Assembly's diplomatic quarter was a maze of chambers, each one adjusted to accommodate different species' environmental needs. Iris and Marcus moved through corridors where gravity shifted, atmospheres changed, and even time seemed to flow differently depending on which delegation you visited. This is insane, Marcus muttered as they passed through another environmental barrier, this one separating them from a methane-breathing species. We're basically cold-calling alien civilizations and asking them not to vote us off the island. Welcome to diplomacy, Iris replied, checking Yuki's continuously updating list on her tablet. Next up, the Valoran Collective. Yuki says they're neutral but value logical arguments. They have 12 votes in their block. They entered a chamber where the Valorans waited. 3 beings that looked like mathematical equations given physical form, their bodies composed of flowing geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. When they spoke, it sounded like differential calculus. Commander Valdrin, the lead Valoran said through the translator. The Xerics claim your species is too chaotic for Assembly membership. Present your counterargument. We will evaluate its logical consistency. Iris had prepared for this. Chaos and innovation are not the same thing. The Xerics call us chaotic because we solve problems in unexpected ways. But consider, we've only had faster-than-light travel for 18 months, yet we've already made modifications to the drive system that improved efficiency by 7%. Our engineer, Zara al-Rashid, can explain the mathematics if you'd like. The Valoran's patterns flickered with interest. 7% efficiency gain? Elaborate. Iris pulled up Zara's technical documentation. We noticed that the standard assembly drive design uses a helical waveform. But during our testing, We discovered that a modified Fibonacci spiral pattern reduces energy loss during spacefolding transitions. It's a small change, but across millions of jumps, it adds up. The Valorans were silent for a long moment, their geometric bodies shifting through complex calculations. Finally, the lead spoke. This is elegant. And the mathematics check out. Why has no one else discovered this in 8,000 cycles of assembly travel? Because everyone else copied the same basic design, Marcus said. Sometimes it takes fresh eyes to spot what everyone else missed. Or, the lead Valoran said slowly, it requires a species unencumbered by traditional thinking. Very well, Commander. The Valoran Collective will abstain from the vote. We wish to see what else your species might discover. 1 block secured. 300 more votes needed. The next 6 hours were a blur of meetings. The Lumini, the jellyfish being who'd helped Iris in the test of strength, pledged their small block of 8 votes in her favor. You trusted when you could not see, they explained. That is rare wisdom. The Kroth, a species of silicon-based engineers, were impressed by humanity's rapid technological advancement. You went from splitting atoms to folding space in less than 2 centuries. We took 3,000 years to make that same leap. Your species thinks fast. We like that. 23 votes. But not everyone was swayed. The Draconis Alliance, a group of warrior species, refused to even meet with them. The Xerics are old allies, their representative said through the door. We do not break old alliances for new uncertainties. 47 votes against them. The Harmony Collective, telepathic beings who valued peace above all, were disturbed by humanity's violent history. We have reviewed your species' records, what you call the maze of memory. So much conflict. So much unnecessary death. We cannot support a species that solves problems through violence. 31 votes against them. With 2 hours remaining, Iris collapsed into a chair in their quarters. Yuki's updated count showed them still 70 votes short of blocking the Xeric's motion. We're not going to make it, Iris said, her voice hollow. Even with every undecided vote, we can't counter their block. Zara looked up from her engineering console. Then we need to change the game. What if we convince species to switch from voting against us to abstaining? We don't need them to support us, just to not actively oppose us. That could work, Yuki said, pulling up voting rules. An abstention doesn't help the Xerics reach their threshold. If we can peel off 60 votes from their block. Marcus shook his head. Those are long-established alliances. What could we possibly offer that would make them break centuries of loyalty? A soft chime announced a visitor. Thalazin entered, looking more exhausted than Iris had ever seen him. I should not be here. As convener, I must remain neutral in voting matters. But I have been part of this assembly for 600 years, and I am tired of seeing the same powers maintain their grip through fear of change. He pulled up a holographic display. The Xeric's Dominion's voting block is built on a foundation of debt and obligation. 70 species owe them technological assistance from centuries past. Another 120 value stability over all else. But there are 43 species in their block who are only there because they fear being excluded themselves. The small species, Iris said, understanding. The ones who don't have military power or economic leverage. Precisely. They vote with the Xerics because opposing the dominant power is dangerous for the weak. But if someone offered them protection, offered them an alternative alliance. Thalazin let the implication hang. We can't offer them military protection, Marcus pointed out. We barely have a space force that can patrol our own solar system. Not military protection, Yuki said slowly. But what if we offered something else? What if we offered them what we gave the Andorians? Help, freely given with no strings attached. Iris sat up straighter. A coalition of the small. We form an alliance with species who've been overshadowed by the major powers. We share technology, offer mutual support, create a voting bloc that can't be ignored. In 2 hours? Marcus asked skeptically. In 1 hour and 47 minutes, Iris corrected, standing up. Thalazin, which species in the Xeric's block are the most vulnerable, the most likely to break away? Thalazin pulled up a list. The Picts are a species of only 4 million individuals, minimal military, but extraordinary agricultural knowledge. The Xerics have been pressuring them to share their food production techniques. The Solara have advanced medical nanites but fear Xeric's appropriation of their technology. The Neth are peaceful explorers who joined the bloc only for protection after a neighboring species threatened them. Give me meetings with all of them. Now. The next 90 minutes were the most intense diplomatic sprint in human history. Iris offered the Picts a simple deal: share your agricultural knowledge with us, and we'll help you establish protected biodomes on 12 uninhabited worlds. No ownership, no demands. Just help building a sustainable food source that the Xerix can't touch. The Pix delegation, 3 small beings covered in what looked like moss, trembled visibly. You would do this? Ask nothing in return? We'd ask that you consider humans as friends, Iris said. That's all. No tribute, no vassalage, no strings. Just friendship between species who believe in helping each other. The Pix conferred in rustling whispers. We abstained from the vote. 8 votes peeled away from the Xerix block. The Solara were harder to convince. Their representative, a being of crystalline beauty, was suspicious. The powerful do not help the weak from kindness. What is your true price? Iris met the crystal being's multifaceted eyes. Our price is that you remember we helped when you didn't have to give us anything. Our price is that maybe, someday when another species needs help, you'll remember what it felt like to receive it freely and you'll do the same. That's how we change the galaxy, one act of kindness at a time. The Solara representative was silent for a long moment. I have lived for 300 years. Never has a species said such words to me. We abstain. 13 votes. The Neth were easiest. As soon as Iris explained that humanity had no interest in dominance, only cooperation, they practically begged to join her coalition. We have been trapped in the Xerix sphere for so long, afraid to speak against them. You offer us freedom simply by existing as an alternative. 19 votes. By the time the assembly reconvened, Iris had peeled away 68 votes from the Xerix bloc through similar offers of cooperation, technology sharing and mutual defense pacts. Not enough to win, but enough to create something that hadn't existed before. A coalition of smaller species who saw Earth not as a threat, but as a hope. The voting chamber was tense. The Xerix representative stood at the central podium, his chitinous armor gleaming with barely contained rage. The motion before the assembly is clear. Humanity has demonstrated disregard for traditional testing protocols and must be excluded for the stability of our ancient institution. The assembly recognizes Commander Valdrin of Earth, Thalazin announced. You may speak. Iris walked to the podium on legs that still ached from the test of strength. She looked out at thousands of species, knowing that humanity's fate rested on the next few minutes. Honorable delegates, she began, her voice steady. The Xerix claim we disregard tradition. They're right. We do. But not out of disrespect. Out of a fundamental belief that tradition should serve the living, not imprison them. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Humanity is young. We've made terrible mistakes. We've committed atrocities that shame us even now. But we've also learned something that I think is worth sharing. The universe doesn't care about your traditions. It doesn't care about your politics or your power structures. The universe presents problems and species either adapt or die. She pulled up images of Earth's history. We faced extinction-level climate change. Traditional solutions said it was impossible to save ourselves. We did it anyway. We faced diseases that should have wiped us out. Traditional medicine said there was no cure. We found them anyway. We stood at the edge of nuclear annihilation and every traditional military doctrine said war was inevitable. We chose peace anyway. The Xerix representative slammed a clawed hand on his console. Irrelevant. This is about rules and order. No, Iris countered. This is about fear. You're afraid that if humanity joins the assembly, we'll disrupt the power structure you've spent millennia building. You're afraid that other species will see there's an alternative to simply accepting the way things have always been. You're afraid that change is coming whether you vote for it or not. She turned to address the entire assembly. I can't promise humanity will never make mistakes. We will. We can't promise we'll follow every tradition. We won't. But we can promise that we will try, every single day, to be better than we were yesterday. We can promise that we will share what we learn freely. We can promise that we will help any species who asks, regardless of whether they can offer us anything in return. Empty words, the Xerix representative hissed. Then let me make them concrete, Iris said. I propose a formal motion. If humanity is admitted to the assembly, we will establish the Open Technology Initiative. Any technological advancement we develop will be shared freely with all assembly members within one solar cycle of its implementation. No patents, no trade restrictions, no strings attached. We will help any species who asks, regardless of their size or influence. The chamber exploded with debate. The idea was insane by assembly standards, where technology was hoarded as power and leverage. But Iris saw species throughout the chamber leaning forward, interested despite themselves. Furthermore, she continued over the noise, We propose the establishment of the Small Species Coalition, an alliance of any member species who wishes to participate in mutual support and technology sharing. Not a replacement for existing alliances, but an alternative for those who feel unrepresented by current power structures. Madness, the Xerix representative roared. You propose to destabilize millennia of carefully balanced power arrangements. I propose to give every species a choice, Iris corrected. You call it destabilization. I call it freedom. Thalazin's voice rang out. The vote is called. All in favor of excluding humanity from assembly membership, signify by your traditional method. Lights flared across the chamber as species voted. Iris watched the tally climb on holographic displays. The Xerix bloc voted as expected, a solid wall of rejection. But other votes flickered, changed, abstained. The final count appeared. 1,847 votes to exclude, 1,612 votes to accept, 958 abstentions. Iris's heart sank. They'd lost. But Thalazin's scales rippled with what she now recognized as satisfaction. By assembly law, a motion to exclude requires a 2/3 majority of cast votes. The Xerix motion has failed to achieve this threshold. Humanity's petition for membership continues to the third trial. The chamber erupted. The Xerix representative was livid, screaming in his native language. But throughout the chamber, Iris saw something else. Smaller species, ones she'd never spoken to, ones who'd watched the entire proceeding, looking at each other with something that might have been hope. As she left the podium, the Lumini floated beside her, pulsing with gentle light. You have done something remarkable, child of Earth. You have reminded us that the assembly was meant to be more than a hierarchy of the strong dominating the weak. You have reminded us of our founding principles. We still have to pass the third trial, Iris pointed out. Yes, the test of wisdom. It is the hardest of all and many have failed. But I believe you will surprise us again. Back in their quarters, her team was celebrating, but Iris felt the weight of what they'd just done. They'd made promises that Earth would have to keep. They'd created expectations that humanity would have to fulfill. And they'd made the Xerix Dominion into a permanent enemy. Thalazin sent the parameters for tomorrow's trial, Yuki said, her expression troubled. Iris, you need to see this. The holographic display showed a simple challenge, a question. A single question that each species was asked, and their answer determined whether they could join the assembly. What is it? Marcus asked. Yuki's voice was quiet. The question changes for each species based on their nature and history. For humanity, it says, when given absolute power, what will you do with those weaker than yourself? Iris felt ice in her stomach. That was the question, wasn't it? The one that defined whether humanity had truly learned from its bloody past, or whether they were just clever predators waiting for a chance to dominate. Tomorrow she would have to answer that question in front of 3,000 civilizations. And the wrong answer wouldn't just exclude humanity from the stars. It would confirm every fear the Xerix had about her species. No pressure. The test of wisdom. Iris didn't sleep that night either. How could she? The weight of the question pressed on her mind like a physical force. When given absolute power, what will you do with those weaker than yourself? She'd studied history her entire life, had walked through humanity's darkest moments in the maze of memory. She knew what her species had done when they held power over others. Colonization, slavery, genocide, exploitation dressed up in 1,000 justifications. But she also knew what they'd done when they chose differently. The Marshall Plan, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the Climate Coalition, the Andorian Medical Aid. Which truth would the assembly accept? You're spiraling again, Yuki said softly. She sat in the window alcove, watching ships drift past in the eternal night. I can hear you pacing from 3 rooms away. How do I answer that question? Iris asked, dropping into a chair. Whatever I say will define how 3,000 civilizations see humanity for the next millennium. So tell the truth, Yuki said simply. Which truth? That we're capable of terrible things when we have power? That's what the Xerix want everyone to believe. Or that we're noble and kind. Nobody will believe that, and they shouldn't. Zara emerged from the workshop, her hands covered in grease despite the late hour. I've been thinking about this wrong. We've all been thinking about this wrong. What do you mean? Marcus asked, appearing with cups of the not coffee. We're treating this like there's a right answer, some perfect philosophical response that will satisfy everyone. But look at what Iris did in the first 2 trials. She didn't give the expected answer. She gave the honest one. Iris frowned. I told the maze we were contradictions. I asked for help in the test of strength. Those weren't calculated moves. Exactly. Zara said, her eyes bright. They were human moves. Messy, imperfect, honest. Maybe that's what we need to be tomorrow. Not perfect, just real. Before Iris could respond, an alert chimed. Thalazan was requesting entry. At 3 a.m. by the station's clock. The convener entered, his scales dim with exhaustion. I am breaking protocol by being here. But you should know that the Xerics have spent the past 6 hours lobbying every major species bloc. They are painting tomorrow's trial as humanity's inevitable failure. They are saying your answer will prove you are dangerous. And what do you think? Iris asked. Thalazan's galaxy eyes swirled. I think the question you face tomorrow was designed 8,000 years ago by the Assembly's founders, who believed that wisdom comes not from having the right answer, but from understanding why the question matters. I think they would have liked you, Commander. That's not exactly helpful advice for tomorrow. No, Thalazan agreed. But perhaps this is, the test of wisdom has no wrong answer. It can only be failed by those who lie to themselves about what they are. He left as mysteriously as he'd arrived, leaving Iris more confused than ever. Morning came too quickly. The amphitheater was packed beyond capacity, with species standing in spaces not designed for their biology just to witness humanity's final trial. The chamber had been transformed into something resembling a courtroom, with Iris standing alone in the center. A holographic projection materialized above her, showing Earth. Not the Earth of today, but a historical montage. Empires rising and falling, wars devastating continents, slavery and oppression, and all the ugly truths of human civilization. But also moments of beauty. The first humans stepping on the moon, children playing in rebuilt cities, doctors saving lives in disaster zones, artists creating beauty from trauma. The question appeared in every language simultaneously. When given absolute power, what will you do with those weaker than yourself? Iris took a deep breath. No calculation, no perfect answer. Just honesty. I can't tell you what humanity will do, she began, her voice carrying through the silent amphitheater. I can only tell you what we've done, and what we're trying to become. She gestured at the images floating above. You see our history. You know what we've done to each other when we've had power. We've enslaved. We've massacred. We've justified atrocity with religion, with nationalism, with 1,000 variations of, we're better than them. We've taken power and used it to crush those weaker than ourselves more times than I can count. The Xerix representatives' mandibles clicked with satisfaction. This was the admission they'd wanted. But, Iris continued, here's what those images don't show you. They don't show you the moment when we collectively decided that was wrong. Not just illegal, not just politically inconvenient, but fundamentally, morally wrong. She pulled up new images. In the 1860s, my country fought a civil war that killed more people than any previous American conflict. Do you know what we were fighting over? Whether it was okay to own other human beings. Half the country said yes, it was necessary for our economy, for our way of life. The other half said no, some things are more important than convenience or profit. The half that said no won. Not everywhere, not perfectly, but we won. And we wrote into our laws that slavery was not just illegal, but evil. One example, the Xerix representative interjected. And it took you how many centuries of slavery before you reached that conclusion? Yes, Iris said simply. Too many. We were slow learners. But here's the thing about humanity, we learn. In the 20th century, after watching millions die in industrial genocide, we created something called the Geneva Conventions. Rules of war. The idea that even in conflict there are lines you don't cross. Even against your enemies, there are basic dignities you must preserve. Was it perfect? No. Did everyone follow it? No. But we created the rules specifically because we knew what we were capable of without it. She looked around at the assembled species. In 2015 we faced extinction-level climate change. The rich nations, the ones with power, could have built walls and let the poor nations drown. We'd done exactly that in previous crises. But this time we chose differently. The climate coalition wasn't just about saving the planet. It was about the powerful nations choosing to help the weak ones, because we'd finally learned that we're all connected. That your survival depends on my survival depends on their survival. Pretty words, someone shouted from the crowd. What about the collapse wars? What about the Mars mining scandals? What about the lunar colony protests you crushed with military force? All true, Iris said, not flinching. We're not saints. We're not enlightened beings who've transcended our nature. We make terrible decisions. We let fear and greed override our better judgment. We have corporations that exploit workers. We have politicians who value power over people. We have systems that perpetuate inequality even though we know it's wrong. She paused, letting the weight of that admission settle. So to answer your question, what will we do when given absolute power over those weaker than ourselves? I don't know. I genuinely don't know. Because it depends on which humans you're asking and on which day and under what circumstances. We're not one thing. We're millions of choices made by billions of individuals, and sometimes we choose well and sometimes we choose terribly. Then you admit you cannot be trusted with power, the Xerix representative declared triumphantly. No, Iris said firmly. I admit we're not perfect. There's a difference. Can we be trusted? Maybe. Can we be trusted more than species who claim they're incapable of abuse? Absolutely. That caused a stir. Here's what I've learned studying 3,000 civilizations over the past week, Iris continued. Every single species in this assembly has skeletons in their closet. Every single one has a history of conflict, of oppression, of using power badly. The Xerix themselves wiped out 2 neighboring species during their expansion phase. The Harmony Collective you heard from earlier? They achieved their peace by forcibly suppressing any individual who expressed aggressive thoughts. The Valoran Collective, our logical friends? They once calculated that it was more efficient to let a weaker species die than to share resources. How dare you? Multiple delegates started, but Iris raised her voice. I'm not trying to shame anyone. I'm pointing out that imperfection is universal. The difference is that some species pretend they've evolved past their violent nature, and some of us admit we're still fighting it every day. I'd rather be honest about my capacity for evil and work actively to prevent it than pretend I'm incapable of it and be unprepared when it emerges. She turned to address the entire assembly. So here's my answer to your question. If humanity is given absolute power over those weaker than ourselves, some of us will abuse it. Absolutely, certainly, some of us will. But others of us will fight those people. We will create systems to check that power. We will make laws against it. We will teach our children that having power doesn't give you the right to use it however you want. And slowly, painfully, over generations, we will try to be better than we were. Trying is not good enough, the Xerix representative said coldly. The assembly requires certainty. Then the assembly is fooling itself, Iris shot back. Because certainty doesn't exist. You want me to promise that humans will never abuse power? I can't. You want me to guarantee we'll be perfect? That's a lie. But I can promise you this, we will never stop trying to be better. We will never pretend we're incapable of evil. And we will never ever stop fighting against our own worst impulses. She pointed at the historical montage still playing above them. You see this? This is us holding ourselves accountable. We don't hide our history. We teach it. We study our own genocides and atrocities not to celebrate them, but to understand them so we never repeat them. We memorialize our victims. We apologize to the groups we've wronged even centuries later, because we believe that acknowledging harm is the first step to healing it. The Lumini pulsed from their section. You speak of eternal struggle. Is this not exhausting? Would it not be easier to simply transcend your violent nature as many species have? Has anyone actually transcended it? Iris asked. Or have they just gotten better at hiding it? Suppressing it? Convincing themselves they're beyond such base emotions? Because I've studied your histories too. The species that claim to be fully enlightened are often the ones most capable of casual cruelty, because they've convinced themselves they're too evolved to be questioned. She thought about her training, about the xenobiology courses and the cultural studies, about the patterns she'd seen. The Serenity Collective claims perfect peace, but they exile any member who experiences anger, sending them to die alone because they can't conform. The unified minds achieved harmony by erasing individual thought. The pure ones reached enlightenment by genetic engineering that removed their capacity for negative emotions, and also their capacity for art, for creativity, for anything that wasn't approved beauty. You're saying consciousness of evil is better than unconsciousness of it? Someone asked. I'm saying honesty about our capacity for evil is the only way to guard against it, Iris replied. If you believe you're incapable of harm, you'll never see it coming when you commit it. If you know you're capable of terrible things, you can build systems to prevent yourself from doing them. Thalazan spoke from his convener's position. Commander Valdrin, you have not answered the question. What will humanity do with absolute power? Iris met his galaxy eyes. We will struggle with it. Every single day we will struggle between the temptation to use it selfishly and the desire to use it justly. Some of us will fail that struggle. But enough of us will keep fighting it that, on balance, I think will do more good than harm. Not because we're saints, but because we refuse to stop trying to be better than our worst impulses. And if you're wrong, the Xerix representative demanded. If humanity gains power and uses it to dominate? What then? Then you'll do what you should do to any species that abuses its power, Iris said simply. You'll check it. You'll oppose it. You'll force accountability. That's what the assembly is supposed to be for, isn't it? Not just a club for the powerful, but a system of mutual accountability. If we join and then abuse our position, call us on it. Force us to face what we've done. Help us be better. Isn't that what civilization is supposed to mean? The chamber fell into silence. Iris could see species conferring, debating, processing her words. Finally, an ancient-looking being that Iris had never seen before rose from a previously empty section. It looked like living stone with moss growing in the cracks of its body. Its voice, when it spoke, seemed to come from the ground itself. I am Elder Kreth, voice of the founding assembly. I have witnessed every admission ceremony for 8,000 years. I have heard species promise perfection, swear transcendence, guarantee enlightenment. All lies. Pretty lies, but lies nonetheless. The being's stone eyes fixed on Iris. You are the first to admit you do not know what your species will do. The first to acknowledge your capacity for evil while claiming you will fight it. The first to suggest that honesty about imperfection is better than false claims of transcendence. Kreth turned to the wider assembly. The test of wisdom was never about having the right answer. It was about understanding that there is no right answer. That wisdom comes from knowing you can be wrong and working to be better anyway. Commander Valdrin has passed. The amphitheater exploded with sound. Some species cheering, others protesting, the Xerix delegation storming out in fury. But above it all, Iris heard a simple chime, the sound of a successful trial completion. Humanity has passed all 3 trials, Thalazin announced, his voice carrying over the chaos. The final vote for assembly membership will be held in 24 hours. All delegates, prepare your positions. As Iris left the arena, surrounded by her celebrating team, she felt both triumph and terror. They'd done the impossible. They'd passed all 3 trials. But the hardest part was still ahead, convincing 3,000 civilizations to vote yes. And she had less than a day to do it. The final vote. The strategy session in their quarters felt more like a wake than a celebration. They'd passed the trials, yes, but the mathematics of the final vote were brutal. We need a simple majority of all assembly members to vote yes, Yuki explained, her holographic displays showing political maps that looked like a strategic nightmare. That's 1,709 votes out of 3,417 species. We currently have confirmed support from 418 species. 1,300 votes short, Marcus said flatly. In 24 hours. Zara was running probability simulations. Even if we convince every undecided species, we're still 800 votes short. We'd need to flip species that are currently voting no. The Xerix block alone is 512 species, Yuki added. Many of them are genuinely loyal to the Xerix ideology. They believe in hierarchy, in the old powers maintaining order. Our message of shared power and mutual support is anathema to them. Iris stared at the political map, watching the clusters of red, against, blue, for, and gray, undecided, shift as new information came in. The gray was shrinking rapidly as species picked sides. This was going to come down to the wire. A chime announced a visitor. When the door opened, Iris was surprised to see not 1 but 7 different beings. Representatives from 7 different small species she'd helped during the protest vote. The Pix delegate spoke first, her moss-covered body trembling. Commander Valdrin, we bring news. The small species coalition you proposed? We have been organizing. We now have 147 species committed to voting as a bloc. That's incredible, Iris started, but the Solara representative cut her off. It's not enough. Even combined with your existing support, you're still 600 votes short. And the Xerix are pressuring our members. They're threatening trade embargoes, military pressure, diplomatic isolation. Already, 23 species have withdrawn from the coalition out of fear. They're also spreading rumors, a third delegate added, a small crystalline being from a species Iris didn't recognize. They claim that if humanity is admitted, you'll immediately try to dominate the assembly. That your technology-sharing promises are just a way to make other species dependent on you. That you'll use the coalition to create a human empire. Marcus swore creatively. How do you fight propaganda when you haven't even done anything yet? You can't, Yuki said quietly. Accusations don't require proof. Denials just sound defensive. We're in an impossible position. Iris paced, her mind racing. There had to be a way. Humans had overcome impossible odds before. They'd faced extinction and survived. They'd stared into the abyss of nuclear war and chosen peace. They'd been divided by every possible difference and still managed to form a planetary government. There was always a way. What if we don't fight the propaganda? She said suddenly. Everyone turned to look at her. What if instead of denying we're dangerous, we prove we're trustworthy? Not with words, but with actions. In 24 hours? Zara asked skeptically. And right now. Iris pulled up her communication console. Thalazin, I need an emergency session with the engineering committee. 3 hours later, Iris stood before a skeptical group of the Assembly's most advanced engineers, from species that had been building starships when humans were still using stone tools. She'd brought Zara with her, and together they'd prepared the most audacious proposal in human history. The modified drive system we developed, Iris began, pulling up Zara's technical specifications, doesn't just improve efficiency by 7%. That was our conservative estimate based on limited testing. With full implementation and optimization, we believe it could improve efficiency by 19% across all standard assembly vessels. The lead Valoran engineer's geometric patterns flickered with interest. 19%? That would revolutionize interstellar travel. Transit times would be reduced by nearly a fifth. Energy costs would decrease proportionally. It would give any species who has it a massive strategic advantage, another engineer noted, suspicion in their multitonal voice. Yes, Iris agreed. Which is why we're giving it away. Not selling, not trading, not conditioning. We're releasing complete technical specifications into the Assembly's public database. Any species who wants it can have it. For free. Right now. The room erupted in chaos. Engineers shouting in 17 languages, the translators struggling to keep up. This is madness, someone declared. That technology is worth nothing to us if it means we don't get into the Assembly, Iris cut in. Look, I know this seems crazy. But humanity has always believed that rising tides lift all boats. If everyone's ships are faster and more efficient, trade improves, communication improves, the entire galactic community benefits. Or, a cynical voice said, you're buying votes. Maybe, Iris admitted. But we're buying them with something valuable that everyone gets to keep regardless of how they vote. Vote against us if you want. You still get the drive specs. Vote for us and you get the drive specs. Either way, everyone wins except the Xerics, who profit from maintaining the technological status quo. That got their attention. Zara stepped forward. Moreover, we're establishing a pattern. The Open Technology Initiative isn't just talk. This is proof that when humanity develops something useful, we share it. You don't have to trust our promises. You can verify our actions. The Valoran engineer tilted in thought. The mathematics of the proposal are sound. And the political implications are intriguing. If humanity truly intends to share all technological advances, they become more valuable inside the Assembly than outside it. Species would have an incentive to keep them in rather than exclude them. Word spread fast. Within 6 hours, the drive specifications were public, and engineering teams from hundreds of species were analyzing them, confirming they worked, beginning to implement them. The political map in their quarters started to shift. Gray converted to blue. Some red shifted to gray. But it wasn't enough. With 12 hours until the vote, they were still 400 votes short. Iris was staring at the political map, trying to find any avenue they hadn't explored, when Thalazin arrived with unexpected news. The Harmony Collective wishes to meet with you. Privately. The Harmony Collective had been one of their strongest opponents, horrified by humanity's violent history. Iris couldn't imagine what they wanted now, but she was desperate enough to take any meeting. The Harmony representative was a being of pure light, its form constantly shifting. Its telepathic voice was like music in Iris's mind. Commander Valdrin, we have been debating humanity's application since your test of wisdom. We are troubled by your species' history of violence. I understand, Iris said. We've given you no reason to trust that we've changed. Actually, the being pulsed, you have. We have been observing you since you arrived. We see how you treat each other. Your team. You do not command through force or fear. When Dr. Tanaka disagreed with your strategy earlier, you listened and adjusted your approach. When Engineer Al-Rashid made an error in calculations, you worked with her to fix it rather than punishing her. When Pilot Webb challenged your decision to give away the drive technology, you engaged his concerns respectfully. The light being brightened. You are violent. This is true. But you are also kind to each other in small moments when no one is watching to judge you for it. That speaks more loudly than any atrocity or achievement. It speaks to who you are when power is not at stake. So, you'll vote for us? We will abstain. We cannot yet vote to welcome violence into the assembly, but neither can we vote to exclude those who show genuine care for each other. Perhaps in time, we will see that your compassion outweighs your capacity for harm. It wasn't a yes, but it was better than a no. And apparently, the Harmony Collective's position carried weight with other peaceful species. 93 votes shifted from red to gray. Still not enough. With 6 hours left, Iris was starting to accept that they might actually lose. They'd come so far, past impossible tests, made friends across the galaxy, and it still might not be enough. Then Marcus burst into the room, his face flushed with excitement. Turn on the assembly-wide feed. Now. The holographic display showed something Iris had never expected. A Xerix delegation member speaking publicly against their own leadership. I am Subcommander Kelthor of the Xerix Diplomatic Corps, the being said, its chitinous armor seeming less intimidating on screen. For 3 centuries I have served my people loyally. But I can no longer support our opposition to humanity's admission. The assembly-wide channel was exploding with shocked reactions. The humans have done in 1 week what we Xerix have failed to do in millennia. They have united the small species. They have given freely what we have hoarded. They have admitted weakness where we have claimed only strength. And in doing so, they have reminded me of what my own people have forgotten. That power is not the same as strength, and strength is not the same as wisdom. Kelthor's message continued. I am one of 47 Xerix who believe our leadership is wrong. We will be voting for humanity's admission, and we accept whatever consequences our dominion imposes for this decision. 47 votes. Not enough on their own, but the symbolism was staggering. Members of the Xerix Dominion itself were breaking ranks. The political map shifted again. Species who'd been afraid to oppose the Xerix suddenly found courage. If Xerix themselves were voting for humanity, maybe it was safe to do the same. The gray started converting to blue. Slowly at first, then in cascades. With 3 hours until the vote, they reached 1,698 votes. 11 short of victory. Iris gathered her team. We've done everything we can. We've shared our technology. We've formed coalitions. We've been honest about who we are. If it's not enough. She trailed off, not wanting to finish the thought. Then we go home with our heads high, Marcus said firmly. We proved humans belong out here. Even if the vote fails, we change something. Yuki nodded. We created the Small Species Coalition. That exists now, regardless of what happens to us. We've given smaller civilizations hope that they don't have to accept the old power structures. And we've shared technology that will benefit everyone, Zara added. That's not nothing. But Iris felt the weight of failure pressing down. They'd come so close. 11 votes. 11 species out of thousands. It seemed impossibly cruel. The final hour ticked down. They made their way to the amphitheater where the vote would be held publicly. The chamber was more crowded than Iris had ever seen it, with species pressed into every available space. The tension was electric. Thalazin stood at the central podium, his scales dim with exhaustion. The past week had clearly taken its toll on him. We gather for the final vote on humanity's petition for assembly membership. This is a historic moment regardless of outcome. Never has a species generated such debate, such passion, such division. Let us proceed, the elder Kreth rumbled from his stone seat. Call the vote. All species in favor of admitting humanity to the Galactic Assembly, signify by your traditional method. Lights began to flare across the amphitheater. Blue for yes, red for no, gray for abstain. Iris watched the tally climb on the holographic displays, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might break through her chest. 400, 600, 800, 1,000. The numbers climbed steadily. Blue lights flickered on across entire sections. The Small Species Coalition voting as a bloc. Species they'd helped individually. The engineering-focused civilizations who appreciated their drive technology. The Harmony Collective and their allies abstaining, which helped by not voting no. 1,200, 1,400, 1,600. The count was slowing. The undecided species had made their choices. Now it was just waiting to see if they'd done enough. 1,650, 1,675, 1,690? Iris held her breath. So close. Please let it be enough. 1,698. The same number they'd been stuck at for 3 hours. The counting paused. Iris could see delegates conferring, could hear the murmur of debate, but no new lights appeared. Then in a section she hadn't been watching, a light flickered. Gray to blue. One vote. 1,699. Another light. A species she'd never spoken to, one she didn't even recognize. Whoa. 1,700. A third light from the Dracones Alliance section. One of the warrior species breaking from their block. 1,701. And then, impossibly from the center of the Xerix Dominion seating area, 10 more lights flickered from red to blue. Not the subcommander's group. Those votes were already counted. These were new defections, Xerix who'd been watching everything and decided at the last possible moment that their leadership was wrong. 1,711. The amphitheater exploded. Species were screaming, celebrating, protesting. The Xerix leadership section was in chaos, their delegates fighting amongst themselves. But above it all, Thalazan's voice rang clear. By a vote of 1,711 to 1,463, with 243 abstentions, humanity's petition for assembly membership is approved. Iris's legs gave out. Marcus caught her, and suddenly her whole team was around her, embracing, crying, laughing. They'd done it. Against impossible odds, against ancient powers, against every reasonable expectation, they'd actually done it. But the celebration was cut short by a roar of fury. The primary Xerix delegate, the one who'd opposed them from the start, was standing, his armor bristling with rage. "This is a mistake that will haunt the assembly for millennia," he declared. "You have welcomed chaos into order, violence into peace. When humanity shows its true face, when they use their power to dominate and destroy, remember this day. Remember that we warned you." He turned to Iris directly. "Enjoy your victory, human. But know this, the Xerix Dominion will be watching. Every move you make, every promise you break, every hint of the violence we know lurks in your species, we will be there to expose it. And when you inevitably fail, we will be there to remove you from this assembly permanently." The threat hung in the air like poison. But before Iris could respond, Elder Kreth spoke, his stone voice carrying absolute authority. Subcommander Kelthor stepped forward. The Xerix who'd spoken against his own people approached the Elder's seat, his posture showing both pride and resignation. "You have broken with your dominion to vote your conscience. This took great courage. The Assembly recognizes your integrity." Kreth turned to the Xerix leadership. "And we remind all members that threats against fellow species violate the founding charter. The Xerix Dominion will monitor humanity's actions, yes. But they will do so within established protocols, or face sanction themselves." The Xerix delegate's mandibles clicked with barely suppressed rage, but he bowed slightly and returned to his seat. The message was clear. Humanity was protected now. They were members. And the Assembly would enforce that membership. Thalazan approached Iris, his galaxy eyes bright with something that might have been pride. "Commander Valdrin, on behalf of the Galactic Assembly, I formally welcome humanity as our newest member. You will have full voting rights, access to all Assembly resources and knowledge, and a permanent seat on the Coordination Council." "We'll try to be worthy of this," Iris said, her voice shaking. "I know you will. Because trying is what humans do." Thalazan gestured to the massive amphitheater, to the thousands of species watching. "You have changed us already, Commander? The Small Species Coalition, the Open Technology Initiative, the very fact that dozens of species broke from ancient alliances to vote for you, these are not small things. You have reminded us that the Assembly is supposed to be about cooperation, not domination. About growth, not stagnation." Over the next hours, Iris was overwhelmed by delegates approaching to congratulate her, to pledge cooperation, to discuss potential alliances. The Lumini offered to teach humanity their meditation techniques. The Valorans wanted to collaborate on theoretical physics. The Picts invited human agricultural specialists to visit their homeworld. But perhaps the most meaningful moment came when Subcommander Kelthor approached, his armor stripped of Xerix Dominion insignia. "I have been exiled from my people," he said simply, "for the crime of voting my conscience. I do not regret it." "I'm so sorry," Iris said. "You sacrificed your home for us." "No," Kelthor corrected. "I sacrificed comfort for truth. There is a difference. And Commander, if you will have me, I would like to serve as a liaison between humanity and the species who still fear you. Someone who can speak to both your potential and your very real dangers." "You do that? Work with us after everything? Who better? I know what you could become if you fail to live up to your promises. But I also saw what you did in 1 week, How you changed the assembly, how you gave hope to species who had none. That potential is worth fighting for, even if it means fighting against my own people. Iris accepted his offer, knowing they'd need voices like his to keep them honest. The celebration continued into the station's night cycle, but eventually Iris found herself alone on an observation deck, watching Earth's sun in the distance. Just one star among billions, but hers. Yuki found her there. You should be celebrating with everyone else. I'm terrified, Iris admitted. We made so many promises. The technology sharing, the coalition, the commitment to be better. What if we can't keep them all? What if the Xerics are right and we're just clever monsters waiting to show our true face? Then we'll face it when it happens, Yuki said. But Iris, think about what we just did. We walked into a society that's existed for 8,000 years and said, your way isn't the only way. We formed alliances with species who'd been ignored for millennia. We convinced members of our opposition to vote against their own leadership. If we can do that in 1 week, imagine what we can do in 10 years. In a century. If we don't screw it up first. We probably will screw up, Yuki said pragmatically. We're human. We're going to make mistakes, going to have moments where we disappoint everyone including ourselves. But you know what? We'll also have moments where we surprise everyone with what we're capable of when we try. That's who we are. Imperfect beings trying to do better. And now we get to do that on a galactic scale. Iris smiled despite her anxiety. No pressure, right? All the pressure, Yuki agreed cheerfully. But at least we're not alone anymore. We have allies now. Friends. Even a few Xerics who believe in us. We're part of something bigger than ourselves. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the stars. Somewhere out there, Earth was receiving the news. Humanity had been accepted into the Galactic Assembly. The messages would be arriving now, spreading across the planet. Joy, fear, hope, anxiety, all the contradictory emotions that made humans human. Marcus's voice crackled over the comm. Iris, you need to see this. Earth is responding. They rushed back to their quarters where Zara had pulled up feeds from across the planet. Cities were celebrating, people dancing in streets, but there were also protests, people afraid of what contact with aliens would mean, concerned about losing human identity or independence. Look at that, Marcus said, pointing to a split screen showing both celebrations and protests. We're not even unified on whether this is good news. That's actually perfect, Iris said, surprising them all. If everyone on Earth agreed about this, I'd be worried we were just blindly following authority. But we're debating it, questioning it, some people celebrating while others voice concerns. That's how we stay honest. That's how we make sure we don't become what the Xerics fear. A priority message came through from Earth's unified government. President Okoye appeared on screen, her face showing a mixture of pride and terror. Commander Valdrin, congratulations. You've done something unprecedented. You've made humanity a galactic power in 1 week. Now comes the hard part, living up to what you've promised. I'm authorizing the formation of a permanent diplomatic corps to join you at the Assembly. We're also establishing the Department of Interstellar Relations to handle the thousands of decisions we'll need to make. But Commander, I need you to stay there. Someone who understands these species, who they trust, who proved we can be trusted. Will you accept the role of Earth's first ambassador to the Galactic Assembly? Iris looked at her team. Marcus grinned and nodded. Yuki's smile was warm with encouragement. Zara gave her a thumbs up. Madam President, Iris said, I accept. On one condition. Name it. My team stays with me. Yuki as Chief Linguist and Cultural Liaison. Marcus as Security Chief and Military Advisor. Zara as Chief Engineer and Technical Specialist. We did this together. We continue together. Granted. You have full authority to negotiate on Earth's behalf, within established parameters. Don't let us down, Ambassador. The title felt heavy. Ambassador. Not just commander anymore, but the official representative of her entire species. One more thing, Iris said. Tell Earth something for me. Tell them we're not perfect. We're going to make mistakes. But we're not alone out here anymore. We have allies, we have friends, and we have a chance to show the galaxy that humans are worth knowing. Let's not waste it. President Okoye smiled. Message received, Ambassador. Make us proud. The transmission ended. Iris turned to her team, feeling the weight of everything that had just happened and everything still to come. So, Marcus said, what's our first act as official Earth representatives? Iris thought about the Small Species Coalition, about the promises they'd made, about the technology sharing initiative, about the Xerics watching their every move for signs of failure. We get to work, she said. We start keeping our promises. One day at a time, one species at a time, one act of cooperation at a time. We show the galaxy that humans don't just talk about being better. We actually try. That's going to take a while, Zara pointed out. Good thing we've got time, Yuki said. All the time in the galaxy. The Empire of Tomorrow. 6 months later, the assembly station felt almost like home. Iris walked through corridors that had once seemed alien and impossible, now navigating the shifting gravities and environmental transitions without thinking. She passed species she now knew by name, exchanging greetings in a dozen languages Yuki had taught her. The changes humanity had wrought in just half a year were staggering. The Open Technology Initiative was thriving. Earth had shared not just the drive improvements, but advances in medical technology, agricultural techniques, and manufacturing processes. In return, 300 species had shared their own knowledge. Human hospitals were using Solara medical nanites. Earth's farms were producing twice as much food using PICS techniques. And humanity was learning things about physics, biology, and philosophy that would take centuries to fully integrate. The Small Species Coalition had grown to 247 members. They'd successfully blocked 3 proposals by the major powers that would have disadvantaged smaller species. They'd negotiated better trade terms. They'd even established a mutual defense pact that made it risky for anyone to threaten coalition members. But it wasn't all success. "We have a problem," Marcus said, meeting Iris in the hallway. His face was grim. "The Concordat of 7 is pushing back against the coalition. They're calling it a destabilizing influence, claiming we're creating a power block that threatens the Assembly's balance." "The Concordat is just worried we're cutting into their influence," Iris said, but her stomach tightened. The Concordat of 7 was one of the oldest alliances in the Assembly, 7 species that had dominated galactic politics for thousands of years. They'd been silent during humanity's admission vote, but they'd been watching ever since. In her office, an actual office now with Earth and Assembly flags, Yuki had worse news. There's been an incident. The human mining colony in the Kepler system had a dispute with a Draconis prospecting team over mineral rights. It got physical. 3 Draconis were injured, 1 seriously. Iris felt ice in her stomach. Our people started it? Security footage is unclear. Both sides claim the other was aggressive first. But Commander, this is exactly what the Xerics have been waiting for. They're already calling for a formal investigation, saying it proves humanity's violent nature. This was it. The moment they'd been dreading. 6 months of building trust, and one incident could tear it all down. Get me everything. All footage, all testimonies, all evidence. I want to know exactly what happened, even if it makes us look bad. And Marcus, I want you personally on the next ship to Kepler. Find out the truth. Over the next 48 hours, as Marcus investigated and the Assembly buzzed with speculation, Iris faced the reality of galactic diplomacy. Species who'd been friendly were suddenly distant, waiting to see how humanity handled this. The Xerics were in full propaganda mode, using every media channel to paint this as proof of human aggression. Then Marcus sent his report. And it was complicated. The Draconis team entered the mining zone that human prospectors had legally claimed 3 weeks prior. But the humans didn't follow protocol. They confronted the Draconis directly instead of filing a complaint through Assembly channels. The Draconis felt threatened by the confrontation and responded with force, which triggered defensive responses from the humans. Both sides escalated. Nobody's innocent here. Iris called an emergency meeting with the Small Species Coalition leadership and then requested formal time to address the full assembly. When she took the podium, she could feel the weight of thousands of eyes judging her every word. 3 days ago, there was a violent altercation between human miners and Draconis prospectors in the Kepler system. I'm here to provide a full accounting of what happened, and to accept responsibility for humanity's part in this incident. She pulled up the security footage, the testimony, all of it. The evidence that showed the Draconis entering human claim territory, but also showed humans confronting them aggressively instead of following proper channels. The moment where the Draconis felt threatened, the escalation, the violence. Both sides made mistakes, Iris said. The Draconis entered claim territory without proper clearance. But the humans responded with confrontation instead of diplomacy. We forgot that we're part of a larger community now, that we have protocols and procedures for resolving disputes. We fell back on human instincts, protect our claim, show strength, establish dominance. It was wrong. The Xerics delegate rose. So humanity admits it is violent and cannot control itself? No, Iris said firmly. Humanity admits we made a mistake and we're taking steps to correct it. We've already established new training protocols for all human prospectors and colonists. They will learn assembly dispute resolution procedures. They will understand that their first response must be diplomatic, not aggressive. And the individuals involved will face consequences under both human and assembly law. She turned to the Draconis delegation. We owe your people an apology. Not just words but meaningful action. We're offering to cover all medical expenses for the injured prospectors. We're proposing a joint human Draconis training program to help both our species understand each other better. And we're willing to submit to assembly arbitration on the mineral rights dispute. The Draconis representative stood, his massive form radiating power. You admit fault. You offer restitution. You submit to our justice. This is acceptable. More than acceptable. This is honorable. Wait, the Xerix delegate protested. They committed violence and you're satisfied with an apology? They committed a mistake and they owned it, the Draconis corrected. They did not hide it, did not excuse it, did not blame others. They faced their failure with honor. That is worthy of respect. The Draconis delegate turned to the wider assembly. I have watched humanity for 6 months, waiting to see if their promises were real. This incident could have been covered up, explained away, buried in bureaucracy. Instead, they exposed it fully and accepted consequences. That is the mark of a species that means what it says. He looked directly at Iris. The Draconis Alliance withdraws our opposition to humanity. We will work with you to ensure such incidents do not happen again. Iris felt tears threatening but held them back. Thank you. We'll try to be worthy of that trust. The aftermath of the incident was transformative. Instead of destroying humanity's reputation, their transparent handling of it actually strengthened it. Species saw that humans didn't just talk about accountability, they practiced it even when it hurt. But the real test came 3 months later. Earth scientists, working with Valoran theorists and Lumini meditation specialists, had developed something revolutionary. A consciousness transfer technology that could allow beings to share memories and experiences directly. It was incredible, potentially transformative for interspecies understanding. But it was also terrifying. The implications for privacy, for autonomy, for the very nature of individuality were staggering. Iris stood before the Assembly Science Committee, Zara beside her, ready to present the discovery. We've achieved something unprecedented, she began. A way for beings to truly understand each other, to share not just words but actual experiences. But we're not here to celebrate. We're here to ask for help deciding if this technology should even exist. The committee members leaned forward, surprised. The potential for good is enormous, Zara explained. Imagine diplomats truly understanding the cultures they negotiate with. Imagine doctors experiencing their patients' pain to better treat them. Imagine artists sharing their creative vision directly with their audience. But the potential for abuse is equally enormous, Iris continued. This technology could be used for interrogation, for violation of privacy, for forced extraction of information. It could be weaponized in ways we can barely imagine. So we're not releasing it. Not yet. We're asking the Assembly to help us develop ethical guidelines first. To decide together if this is something the galaxy should have. The lead Valoran scientist's patterns flickered rapidly. You developed a revolutionary technology and you're asking permission to use it? We're asking for wisdom, Iris said. Because humans have a bad history of developing powerful technologies and only thinking about the consequences after people get hurt. We're trying to be better than that. We're trying to think ahead. Over the next weeks, the consciousness transfer debate consumed the Assembly. Every species had opinions, concerns, hopes. Some wanted it released immediately. Others wanted it banned forever. Most fell somewhere in between. Ultimately, the Assembly established the first-ever Ethical Technology Commission, a joint body representing 50 species that would review dangerous or transformative technologies before they were widely released. It was a new institution, created specifically because humanity had asked for it. You know what's funny? Marcus said one evening as they watched the Commission's first session. We came here thinking we'd learn from advanced civilizations. Turns out they needed to learn from us too. Learn what? Yuki asked. That progress without ethics is just chaos in a prettier package. That power without accountability is just tyranny with better PR. That being advanced doesn't mean being wise. Iris smiled. We're not teaching them anything they didn't already know. We're just reminding them. The Assembly's founding principles were all about cooperation and mutual growth. They just forgot somewhere along the way. And now we're here to remind them, Zara said. By being the newest, messiest, most imperfect members who still somehow keep trying to do the right thing. A year after their admission, Iris was invited to speak at the Assembly's Founding Day ceremony, a rare honor usually reserved for elder species. She stood before the full assembly, feeling the weight of representing not just Earth, but an idea. A year ago we came here as strangers. We didn't know the protocols. We didn't understand the politics. We broke rules, challenged traditions, and generally made nuisances of ourselves. Light laughter rippled through the chamber. But you let us in anyway. Not because we were perfect, but because we were honest. Not because we had all the answers, but because we were willing to ask the hard questions. Not because we were powerful, but because we were willing to be vulnerable. She looked out at the thousands of species, representing millions of worlds, billions of individuals. The assembly was founded on a simple idea: that different species with different biologies, different philosophies, different ways of seeing the universe, could work together for mutual benefit. That cooperation was stronger than competition. That diversity was a strength, not a weakness. Somewhere along the way, that vision got clouded by politics and power struggles and the simple inertia of doing things the way they've always been done. Humanity didn't come here to conquer or to dominate. We came here to join. To be part of something bigger than ourselves. And in doing so, we've reminded all of us, of what the assembly was supposed to be. Not a hierarchy of the strong ruling the weak, but a community of equals helping each other reach for the stars. She paused, letting the words settle. We're still imperfect. We're still making mistakes. We'll still sometimes forget to follow protocol or accidentally insult species we're trying to befriend. But we're trying. Every day we're trying to be better than we were yesterday. And we're grateful, deeply, profoundly grateful, that you're giving us the chance to try. So here's what humanity promises on this founding day: we will continue to share what we discover. We will continue to ask difficult questions. We will continue to hold ourselves accountable when we fail. And we will continue to believe that a galaxy of cooperation is better than a galaxy of domination, even when cooperation is harder. Thank you for letting us join you among the stars. Let's build something amazing together. The response was overwhelming. Not just applause, but species-specific signs of approval from across the spectrum of galactic life. And perhaps most meaningful, Subcommander Kelthor and 46 other exiled Xerics stood in their section, showing solidarity despite their exile. After the ceremony, Thalazin found Iris in the celebration that followed. "Do you know why I invited humanity?" he asked. "You said we were late receiving the invitation because we were slower to develop FTL travel." That was true, but not the whole truth. Thalazin's galaxy eyes swirled. The assembly has been stagnant for millennia. The same powers maintaining the same structures, the same ways of thinking dominating every debate. We needed something to shake us out of our complacency. We needed a catalyst for change. So you gambled on humanity being that catalyst? I gambled on humanity being honest enough to force us to be honest with ourselves. And I was right. Thalazin gestured at the celebration, where species that had never interacted before were now collaborating because of humanity's influence. You have changed us, Commander. Ambassador. You have reminded us that the galaxy is vast enough for new ideas, new approaches, new possibilities. What if we disappoint you? Iris asked. What if we can't live up to the expectations we've created? Then you will fail, learn, and try again. That is what growth looks like. That is what living systems do. They adapt, they evolve, they sometimes fail spectacularly before they succeed. Thalazin's scales rippled with amusement. The galaxy has been playing it safe for too long. Humanity is our reminder that safety and stagnation are the same thing. 18 months after admission, Earth's Ambassador Corps had grown to 300 individuals stationed across the galaxy. Human students were studying at assembly universities. Alien students were attending human schools on Earth. Trade was flourishing. Cultural exchanges were changing both humanity and the species they interacted with. But there were challenges. The Concordat of Seven was increasingly hostile, seeing humanity as a threat to their influence. There were human colonies that resented assembly oversight. There were alien species that still feared human violence. The galaxy wasn't perfect, and neither was humanity's place in it. Yet every day progress happened. One cooperation at a time. One shared discovery. One moment of understanding between species that had nothing in common except their determination to try. Iris stood on the observation deck one evening 2 years after their arrival and watched the stars. Somewhere out there, the horizon's reach was on another mission, this time with a mixed crew of humans and aliens working together. Somewhere, Marcus was training assembly security forces in human tactics. Somewhere, Yuki was helping species decode ancient texts using linguistic techniques from 20 different worlds. Somewhere, Zara was building things that shouldn't be possible with teams of engineers from a dozen civilizations. And somewhere, on a small blue planet orbiting an average star in an unremarkable section of the galaxy, 8 billion humans were waking up to another day in a universe that was bigger, stranger, and more full of possibilities than they'd ever imagined. The dream of the stars wasn't about conquest or domination. It wasn't about humanity proving it was better than everyone else. It was about being part of something larger than themselves, about sharing in the grand adventure of existence with 3,000 other species who were all trying to figure out this whole civilization thing. They would make mistakes. They would have setbacks. There would be incidents and accidents and moments where everyone wondered if letting humanity join was a terrible error. But there would also be breakthroughs and friendships and unexpected moments of grace. There would be human children playing with alien children, learning that different didn't mean bad. There would be discoveries that no single species could have made alone. There would be art and music and poetry that transcended biology to speak to something universal. Humanity had earned its place among the stars not by being perfect, but by being perfectly honest about their imperfection. By admitting their capacity for evil while striving for good. By acknowledging their violent history while working toward a peaceful future. By being, in short, exactly what they were, a species of contradictions trying desperately to be better than their worst impulses. And the galaxy in all its ancient wisdom and alien strangeness had looked at this young, chaotic, brilliant, flawed species and said, "Yes, we'll take a chance on you. Welcome to the assembly. Let's see what we can build together." Iris smiled at the stars, at the impossible future spread before her, and whispered to the universe, "We won't let you down. We'll try our best. That's all anyone can do." The stars, in their infinite silence, seemed to shine just a little brighter. And in 3,000 worlds across the galaxy, beings of every imaginable form looked up at their own skies and thought about the newest members of their ancient community. The humans. The chaos species. The ones who'd reminded everyone that change was possible, that the old ways weren't the only ways, that hope was a choice you made every single day. The empire humanity built among the stars wasn't one of conquest or dominance. It was an empire of ideas, that cooperation beats competition, that honesty beats deception, that trying beats giving up. It was an empire built not on the backs of the weak, but on lifting them up. Not on hoarding power but on sharing it. Not on being the strongest but on helping everyone be stronger together. And that empire, built on nothing more substantial than hope and determination and the stubborn human refusal to accept that good enough was ever actually good enough, would endure. Would grow. Would change the galaxy in ways no one, not even Iris standing there watching the stars, could fully imagine. Because that's what humans did. They dreamed of impossible things and then they worked to make them real. They looked at the universe and said, "We can be better," and then they tried, failed, learned, and tried again. And slowly, painfully, beautifully they were. The stars witnessed it all, silent and eternal. And if they could have smiled they would have.